Welcome back, CSE 3200 Yukon Stores. We're going to wrap up Hello World, at least I hope we are. All right, we're going to get over to the main. Before I do, this is something that we could have and should have probably dealt with at the very beginning, but when we're first learning, we got all sorts of things to talk about. The ID. Okay, the ID shows up pretty generic, and sometimes, who cares? It's just a small program, and I'm not going to deal with it. But we should care most of the time because usually we're not making an app that only takes us, 30 minutes to do, start to finish, okay? So we're going to have lots of things, and we might have multiple text views, and we're really going to want them to be named something like what they do. We want it to make sense because on the other side, we're not going to see this code. I'm talking about when we're in the main activity, we're not going to see what's over here unless we have it printed out or we have a big monitor and we can do dual screens or something. So we want this to make more sense and be what we think it should be. All right, so let's start with the button. So let's go to the button, and instead of calling it just generic button, let's say that it is a display button. So let's say it is display underscore button. That's a little bit better. Now, on this side, that could cause errors. Did it? Well, let me go to just code. I don't see that it did. Okay? All right. But let's see. Take a look at this edit text. If I look at this constraint, it went to the text view. So if I change the ID of the text view, let's say we say that's where I put my greeting. So let's call this greeting text view. That makes better sense. Did I get an error now? Well, yes, I did, because this doesn't say that name. So I probably can get an autocomplete that's relatively smart. Yeah. All right. That should have worked. Sometimes I get it so that I make a fix, and it even was the one that it suggested. I'll take a close look at it in a second and make sure that that's what happened, but it still says there's an error. So let me take a close look. Well, I fixed it without actually finding the error. Maybe it was something like, maybe I didn't capitalize the V. That's probably it. But it should have been fixed. What I was getting at is that sometimes, even when I do this autocomplete and I fix the error, it still shows up as an error. Now, that I didn't expect that was going to happen this time. It typically happens when I say I change an ID here, but I want to go over to the main, and it's been changed appropriately, but the main doesn't yet know that this has been changed correctly. Usually just running it or resyncing it would fix that error, but I think I actually had an error in here. I think it might have said lowercase v, which means that that's not spelled the same, and with copy and paste, I changed it to a text view. Okay, so changing my IDs later could mean that I got more work to do, so I probably should do it earlier. Do I care what this says? Edit text. Yeah, that's just a bad name. Let's say that this is my my name box. Okay, did I get errors here? Yep, one. All right. Change this to name box. Did I spell it right? Looks like I did. Okay, we're finally heading over to our main. We can get rid of strings. Let's go and to Kotlin Java, drill down, bring our main back up. Okay. We will get into, a little bit of more detail about Kotlin, for like day 1, day 2. That's a pretty nasty bit of code, all right? So I'm not ready to tell you what everything there is doing, but we will, okay? So we're going to start with something that's a little bit simpler. Right after our line that says main, we're going to put in late init var. All right, interesting. Okay, this is fairly close, but not what I want. Late init var display button of type button. All right, and this type var. Now, okay, that was red for a little bit, and then it wasn't. When I started this class a couple years ago, you actually had to come up here and import or hover and right-click to import, but it's much smarter now, and that is such a relief. Okay, so we call this display button. Did I call it the same thing on this side? Nope, I called it display underscore button. Who cares? It could have been the same. It doesn't have to be the same. These are in different files. They're not the very same name, okay? It's not going to be a namespace collision either way. All right, so display button. Okay, so let's cover this. Colon button. This means it is of type button. And you see this in some of the code that was automatically generated. For instance, our class is going to be named the main activity, and it is of type app compat activity. Okay, we'll get into what app compat activity is at a later time. But here, the thing that we're going to have, this is my name, is going to be of type button. All right, why is it gray? I haven't used it yet. Even if I put it as display underscore button, like on the other side, even though it's used over there, this is a brand new version, display button. Okay, var, there's two choices in Kotlin. It's either val or it's var. You know, in Java, it's you get the type up here instead of over there, and you don't have var or val. Okay, var means it's variable, it can change. Val means that it can't change, it is a constant. Late init is a promise. It says, I'm not setting the value of button now, but before I use it, I will. Okay, so that's that line. Now we're going to go after most of that code that we were given. Display button equals, all right, now I do want that exactly, oh, almost exactly. Okay, find view by ID, r.id, and button was the default, but if I back it up and I type ID, then I get some better choices like this display button, okay? That's how I spelled it on the other side, so it's intelligently, smartly, whatever. It's going over here and saying, okay, what do we think they mean? And it's giving us some options. It's the display button that I want. Notice that it didn't know any better than to say any of the other fields, even though it was of type button. All right, so r.id.display button. Why do I have an error here? Let me hover. Okay,